Hello everyone, my name's Joel and I'm doing this video as part of Norman Creek Press's Book of the Month, and this is for the month of September, our second Book of the Month video. And today we're going to do Wolf Totem by Jiang Rong, which is described as an intellectual adventure story. So let's get into it. You might see it in bookshops like this, and it's a very famous Chinese novel. I've read the English translation, but before we get into it, just to make sure that you don't confuse this with the movie. I have seen the movie and I was quite disappointed. It's sort of took out so many things that are good about the book. There was all of the cultural and political messages of the book have been completely removed, and it's been watered down into this sort of generic environmental film. It had great scenery and the landscapes were fantastic, but the characters and the plot just failed to live up to what the book was trying to achieve. Should also make sure that you're not confusing it with The Who, Wolf Totem. This is a great Mongolian band, and I really do recommend that you listen to some of their music if you get the chance. I really enjoy it. Interestingly enough, I watched a documentary on ABC about Mongolia and the decline of the nomadic lifestyle, and two of the singers or musicians in The Who come from nomadic families, and they have a similar message in their music about the decline of nomadic lifestyle and how it needs to be preserved. They're from Outer Mongolia. Now, before we continue, just be careful for spoilers for this book. By the way, this doesn't happen in the book at all. So if you're going on from now, you are ready for spoilers. So there are environmental themes in this book, but one thing that I noticed when I was doing my research is some people were going on about climate change, and I guess you could argue that climate change is involved in everything, but I don't feel like this book was actually specifically about climate change. Rather, I think it was more about the removal of an apex predator, which would cause imbalance in the ecosystem. So wolves, they keep the antelope and the sheep and the wild goats and the marmots and the mice, all of those numbers down. And I liked how the book sort of described how these herbivore species were at war with the grasslands, and that the wolves were sort of protecting the grasslands from them by keeping their numbers down. It's sort of similar to how wolves change rivers, if you've ever seen that video, and it talks about trophic cascades, and I think that this was very much part of the book rather than climate change. If you also compare modern, well, I guess it's been done for a long time, but it's sort of enjoying a resurgence, is this idea of mobbing, which is like you keep your cattle or your livestock in small groups in a small area and then move them around, and sort of simulates how they would be living in a herd for safety against predators. So I think this is very much in tune with the themes of the book. Another thing that I really enjoyed about this book is the mentions of Tengrism. I don't know if I've pronounced that correctly, but it's sort of the religion, it's shamanic, of all of the Mongolians, but also all of the Turkic people. It's pre-Buddhism, pre-Islam, from the central grasslands. And I found that quite interesting, this idea of wolf burial, where the wolves eat the body of the deceased, sort of similar to the vulture burials in Tibet. And this love-hate relationship that the Mongolians have with wolves, in that they respect them, but of course they also defend their livestock against them. And it's sort of all of the descriptions about the traditional nomad life I found very interesting in this book. And one of the other themes is this idea of nomadic or traditional Mongolian lifestyle versus agricultural life, and it goes so far as even to compare the diet of the Mongolians, which is heavy in meat and dairy like cheese and things like that, versus the vegetarian Han Chinese, and comparing this, it sort of reminded me actually of indigenous lifestyle versus colonizer lifestyle. So, this doesn't just happen in China. I'm not trying to pick on any particular country or get involved in any kind of political statement, because you could argue that this sort of struggle is going on all over the world, especially the environmental problems. And so I'm not sure. I saw this picture about the wolves versus sheep and I liked it, but I'm not sure if the person who made that video is talking about people being sheeple. So I'm not sure if I completely agree with everything in that video. But the other thing is, it was an interesting window into this the traditional lifestyle of Mongolia versus the new communism and the destruction of the four olds, which is thought, old culture, old customs, old practices. Moving on with that theme, it's a good little view into this cultural revolution of China, when academics were sent into the country to work. And Inner Mongolia, which is the part that's part of China, was one of the places where some of them went. And one thing I did like was, this is a Chinese author writing about this, whereas a lot of what I would read on this particular topic would be written by Westerners. So it's interesting to get a perspective from that, a different perspective. And also I think it's not overly critical. I think that basically the people that were sent out into the country, in this story at least, did grow from it. And although their life was hard, I think that it was a worthwhile experience for them. So, how accurate is this description in the book? Some critics claim that it's not an accurate description of Mongolian traditions, and that the wolf is not a totem in Mongolian lifestyle or traditional religion. That there is some evidence that it was sort of respected, and I think that the story itself doesn't have them being worshipped, or the actual Mongolian hunters were horrified when the main character started to rear a wild wolf and pup. And so I think you shouldn't overstate this sort of notion of the wolf totem. And also I'd ask, how different is the wolf totem idea in the book from the sort of airy-fairy notions of wolf spirits and wolf totems that Westerners put on to other indigenous cultures. If we think about all of the Native American, First Nations, I'm not an expert in this, but there's a lot of stuff that Westerners put on to those traditional beliefs about wolves, and I don't know whether that is correct. I don't know. It was criticized for its treatment of farmers, but I don't think it was criticizing, I don't think it was getting right into the farmers. Most of the people in the story were from rural backgrounds. The Mongolians were herders and hunters, and they had large herds of horses and cattle and sheep and goats. So I don't think they were anti-rural, but I do think that there was this idea that the crop farmers were destroying the soil, and I think that that's something we do have to be careful of. Some postmodern thinkers and sonologists have described the movie as fascist. I'm not sure if I agree with that either. There was no political fascism in the story, and I actually am a bit suspicious of some academics who criticize this book based on where they might be getting their funding from, but I'll leave that, as I don't want to get into any politics or anything like that. I think it should be read as a work of historical fiction, and if you do it like that, you'll enjoy the book and just realize that it's not an accurate description of Mongolian lifestyle, because it's not written by a Mongolian, it's written by a Chinese academic, and although he's describing his experiences in Mongolia, it's still a sort of fictionalized version of that. Anyway, thanks for listening. I think it is a good book. Enjoy it. I like all the Genghis Khan sort of talk in there, and it uses a lot of language that you won't find anywhere else. Only an author like Jiang Rong could write like that. I think it's got a good message. I found the book got a bit heavy in the middle, so I actually put it down for a couple of months. I was busy at the time, but I found that after sort of the initial big battle with the horses and the wolves, it gets a bit heavy, and then I had to sort of, I did put it down, and then I picked it back up again and finished it. I'm reading it for my second time now, and I'm enjoying it. It's a good book. I do enjoy it, and I would love to go to Mongolia and check out this, very interesting culture. I have mentioned to some of my Mongolian friends about the wolf totem, and they haven't really known what I was talking about, so I would tend to agree that the wolf totem is not part of their modern culture anyway. So these are my sources that I've used, and you can check them out. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please subscribe to this channel and like the video so that I know to make more like this. If you want to keep up to date with everything that we're doing, hit the notifications button and that'll let you know. All of those things help us because it lets YouTube know that we have an audience and what we're doing is interesting. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.